everything I base my, not to get like heavy, because I really didn't think I was going to be talking about this, but when I talk to people who had a perfect childhood,
Mm.
they have a different way of bringing up their kids because they think that the world is perfect. So I had a very lovely childhood, but I also found myself being molested for 5 years of my life, which because of that, it's made me a much better parent and a much more aware parent. Everybody thinks that like it's at the park, what you said, you go to the park, it's more common in your own family, like the people that are closest to you.
Funny how.
Come here, though. Yeah, he's crazy, see? Who are you?
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Yeah, I mean, she's kind of on this tear, which I don't know if you could relate to this, but she has like 5 days of like really good sleep. And then there's just like one day where it's just like maybe she's learning something new or, something's going on where she just gets up all the time every 30 minutes. And we just combined don't get a lot of sleep. So, yeah.
Did she sleep with you?
She sleeps in the bassinet next to us. Yeah. Yeah,
You pull her in the bed?
No. Should we?
Mm-hmm.
Does that help?
There's
No.
like are we recording it? This isn't recording, right?
Oh yeah, it is, but I mean I can cut it out. I was just
Oh, I don't care. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a study that I'll have to send you like the whole thing about it, but
Yeah.
um your child like sleeping with you up until 7 is so beneficial because if they're having like the mother's able to regulate your child just by
Mm.
being next to her. So bad dreams, rapid heart, like anything, they calm down. Like my little one still sleeps with us. And like
And
everyone's like, don't do it. I'm like, it's the best thing you'll ever do because you will sleep.
yeah, and that's the key, right? Is like, happy household, you can raise the kid better. I mean, if you don't, you can't really raise a kid when you have 2 hours of sleep a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, we definitely did that like in the beginning, I think, like at 3 or 4 months, where occasionally she would wake up and then, we would kind of put her between us. But we also have like a corgi that sleeps with us too. So we were always kind of like worried, but now he kind of gets it. Now he
Yeah.
understands, oh, this is like a tiny human. I need to be careful. But okay, that's good practice. Yeah, if you have any studies on that, yeah, shoot that to me. I know the wife would be ecstatic about it because she's kind of torn between, do we put her in the room? How long do we go? If it was up to her, it'd probably be till like she was 18. But
Yeah.
which, I definitely could appreciate for sure. So that's interesting. Well, anyway, hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So my background is I mean I don't really know. I used to be a single mom, so I raised my oldest completely different than I do now. I was not into health and wellness at all. I was not
Mm.
into homeschooling. I was very much a fan of breast augmentations, Botox, and the bigger the better on everything.
Sure.
Um, and then I got very sick after my second augmentation, and nobody knew what was going on. I knew I was dying. Nobody believed
Whoa.
me. Um, I went to multiple doctors and they all told me I had postpartum depression, which I knew I did not. I've never experienced anything like that. No baby blues, no nothing. So I knew I was sick. I was vomiting. I had diarrhea. I couldn't keep anything down. I had a crazy rash. I had a smell coming out of me that you couldn't even be in a room with me because you were like, it smelled like I was dying.
Wow.
It
And
was a
I'm
horrible.
sorry, this was kid one or kid two?
This was after kid two.
Kid two. Okay.
So I knew something was wrong because I woke up one day and I went to open up a jar of pickles and I couldn't make my hand do this to open the jar. Like I had nothing. It was like my brain wasn't connecting to my hand to do it. And then I put my palm on it and I just couldn't. It was like I was looking at something that like wasn't a part of my body. And I was like, okay, something's really wrong. And
Whoa.
then shortly after that, the brain fog set in where I had no memory of like anything. I would get in the car to go to the bank. I'd be driving my little one. And then I'm like, I had to pull over because I had no idea what I was doing in the car or where I was going or what was going on. So I had to keep a notebook and write everything down. Like if I was going to the grocery store and then the bank and then whatever, I had to put like, this is what you're doing. Because if not, it was like I was walking around like not in my body.
Ooh.
Um, so I went to this one doctor. I'm not going to say his name. And He ran a ton of tests. I was so excited. I've never been more excited to like find out what was wrong with me. And a lot of it wasn't covered by insurance because it was like everything.
Right.
So that was 8 grand for that to do all these tests. And then it was like 3 weeks and I was going back and they never asked me if I had implants or anything like that. It was a very kind of generic thing. And
Mhm.
then he said, well, we can't figure out what's wrong with you. Everything looks great. So we think you have fibromyalgia and postpartum depression. And I got 2 scripts, one for antidepressant and one for another medication. I would never take either of them. And I sat in my car and I was hysterical crying. I'm like, this is terrible. So I went and got my will all set up, everything my husband. I was because I do like all the bills. Like I I'm the one that does like all the bookkeeping and stuff like that for the family. So I'm like writing down the passwords because my husband doesn't know them. So I'm like, he's gonna need to know all this stuff because
Right.
this is like crazy.
And you didn't know what was going to happen
And
at this point. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And of course everyone around me is like, well, you went to the doctor and they said you're fine. So I was like, okay. My hair was falling out. That was lovely. Um and like I love my hair.
It looks
So
amazing now, by the way. Fantastic.
thank you. Um So it was like 2 nights later, I was watching YouTube with my husband, and this video came on by this woman, like Carissa Pukas, and she was talking about her breast implant illness. And she went through all of the symptoms, and it was checking every single box for me. And I was like, this is what I have. And he was like, come on, like, I'm like, no, this is like what I have. Like, it clicked in my brain. There was like not a shadow of a doubt. Like, I knew 100%. I started like doing my research. I made an appointment with my plastic surgeon. He was like, I don't think this is like a real thing. And I was
Of
like, all
course,
right, we're
of
taking him
course,
out.
he would said that, right?
Yeah. And he's like, I loved him. I mean, I have nothing negative to say about him. He's done every one of my everythings. But you never want to hear that something that you're doing could be dangerous for
Sure.
people.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not his fault by any means because when he did go over the risks, I wasn't even listening. I just wanted him done. I mean,
Yeah.
there was nothing he would have said that I would have been like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll pause that.
Sure.
So he said, why don't we do an MRI and see what's going on? And I was like, no, schedule me. We're getting them out. Like, I'm done. Um, Surgery was, I think, 3 weeks to a month later.
Mm.
I got really sick, like even more sick. I would like projectile vomit out of nowhere. Like, it'd be like you had food poisoning, no
Oof.
control. It was horrible. I felt so bad for my husband because he was with that for me, or helping me. And I was so sick. I was not to be disgusting, but I was going to the bathroom and it was like yellow,
Whoa. That's
right?
a color you don't want to see. Yeah.
No. And I went to my regular doctor and she was like, don't say anything. It's your implants. Don't tell them that you're this sick. Get them out. So the morning of surgery, I was like shaking, had like, it was horrible. Well, here what happened was my implant was ruptured. So the yellow that was coming out of me was actually the exact color of my implant. I can share this with you after. Um, it was busted everywhere. So they had to like scrape it out
So
from all over.
it was going through your entire system.
Yes.
Insane.
Um, I had silicone and they hold their shape. So if you looked at me, they looked completely fine, but they were not fine. It was like a rupture. I didn't work out. I was never in a car accident. I never fell. They were only 3 years old because my first set was 3.5 years old. I wanted bigger ones. Went for the second set, 3.5 years. I was sick. So it's not like they were 10, 15 years old. Um, it was crazy. Anyway, that's what catapulted me to where I am now, which I am a completely different person. And I always say I'm glad that that happened because it stopped me from doing all of the toxic stuff that I was doing.
Mm. Meaning surgeries and ops and
Oh
stuff
my
like that.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I used to have my cheeks filled, my nasal labial folds here filled, my bunny lines filled, like my forehead. I had like filler everywhere because I just didn't want to look. I was so afraid to age. And
Mm.
when I look back, I'm 41 now. And when I look back at those pictures, I looked like
So you're doing
I
those
looked
young.
horrible. Looked horrible.
Yeah, you were doing those young.
And I was, 10, 15 years younger, and I look older
Sure.
because I was doing all this stuff to my face.
Yeah. Which is so weird. And I'd love to get your opinion because I've never had someone on the podcast that has had ops like that. And as a big fan of the show Botched, I do want to, we always look back. I think a lot of us, we look at like people like Courtney Cox. I can't think of any celebrities off the top of my head, but that's just one that came to mind because she was on a show that I was watching yesterday. It was a rerun Modern Family, and she was on it, and she just looked horrible. Like she was so beautiful. And I think this type of body dysmorphia that not just for women, but for men, when we work out, we want to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we don't see ourselves as muscular, so we want to get more muscle. So it happens, to everybody. But when you're in that position, like when you were in that position of doing it, did you honestly think you were old at that moment and you need to reverse it? Or was it something where I know I look good, but I'm preventing myself from looking older in the future? Like was it mentally looking back? I mean, can you walk me through that?
Yeah, I knew I didn't look old, but even Botox is a preventative thing because
Sure.
unless you already have like the deep lines, that you
Right.
need filler for. Botox is just going to stop that muscle from moving. So it's going to prevent you from getting a deeper wrinkle that's permanently there.
Yeah.
I never had them. I just like that frozen look. But the
Right.
problem is when you go, they have a very good way about being like, well, you're starting to move here a little bit. And I'm like, what? What do
Mm.
you mean? Hit that. Next time, well, it looks great, but what if we try this? Now, I saw somebody that I know that had a lip flip, and they can go wrong. I mean, everything can go wrong, but a lip flip is when you put Botox right above your lip and it like naturally makes your lip curl so that it looks like you have filler, but you don't. And guess what her lip did? Down. She had a permanent frown for like 6 months.
Holy
Can't
shit.
do anything about that.
No matter how good her life was going, it was a frown.
Yes.
Promotion at
Yes.
work, frown.
Yes. And it
Just
was
got
before
married,
like a,
frown. Yeah.
yeah, it was before a big like company work trip that
Oh
everybody,
no.
was like a thing. And yeah, it was horrible. I don't think she's ever done it again.
Ugh.
Um,
Yeah, because
and she's beautiful.
yeah, and I don't, I guess I never understood that. I mean, I kind of do because I was a personal trainer, one of my first careers, and I was working out 3 times a day, and my parents were like, "Dude, you're getting too big," because I'm only 5'5". They're like, I was 165 pounds shredded, and they're like, looking back now, I see pictures, and in the moment, I wasn't big, but everyone's like, dude, you look kind of weird. It's too big. It's too much. You're working out too much. You're eating too many calories, yada, yada. And I go, no, this is my goal. This is what I want to do this. I want to get better. So like looking back, I'm aware of it. But then it's so strange. Like for celebrities, I see this and I bring up Courtney Cox. I'm not picking on her. She's a beautiful woman. But there's no way like I guess there is, but you get out of that surgery and you look at yourself or you look at, especially when you're on TV, when you're a celebrity. Like she was on Cougar Town. There's no way you're looking back at those reruns saying, it was a good decision I did that. And then
Yeah.
keep doing it. Like I just can't understand the concept of looking at yourself and thinking you're not good enough. I know it exists. It's just hard for I think us to comprehend, maybe because I was in that situation before. But it's interesting when you're in that moment, you don't think you look good. It's the inner beauty that is, we judge it so harshly.
Oh yeah. It's hard too with like my lips. I always had like what would be considered bigger lips, not now.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll never forget my friend said to me, "Your lips are really starting to thin out." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "They just look like so much thinner." And then the next week I went and got my lips done.
Yeah,
And the
that
first
bitch.
time I did my lips, oh, I'm not even friends with her anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, her name was probably like Rebecca or Jessica or something like Mean Girl style. Yeah.
It was, she showed her colors in
Yeah.
other ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, well, I'll just say it. One of the things that I realized, like this person's not good in my life, she came over my house and we were very close. And she told my husband, "Oh my God, I had a sex dream about you. It was so embarrassing." How embarrassing is that? And I'm like, girl, why are you saying that right now to my husband?
Whoa. Yeah.
Right. It was like a very weird, and he didn't really know what to say about it, but he was like, why would she even say that? It was like she wanted me to know that she was thinking of him in that way. It was just very weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to my lips.
She's putting out the fillers. Yeah.
Yes.
So
I
back to your
got them
lips. Yeah.
done
Hmm.
um I got them done the first time and they looked great. And then the next time I went, somehow we went from one vial to two. And then two wasn't enough. I'm sorry, dogs. Just sorry. I love dogs. Um, we went from one to two.
Mm.
And then sat with them for a while. And then the next time it was three. I had three syringes in my face. Like I looked like an idiot, but at the time I
Wow.
thought I looked great. I thought I
Yeah.
looked great.
Ugh.
It was horrible. It's hard to see it when you're doing it because you think
Sure.
like more is better, but it's not. So that's why a lot of these
Right.
celebrities, they look horrible because they just can't stop themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And there's a very interesting, I think it's more of it might be like a stoic proverb or quote or something I heard about, but it was fascinating when most of us look at a picture of ourselves like on a phone and we like that picture, but then when we look ourselves in the mirror, we're in the same outfit, we don't like it. And that's because when you look at the mirror, that's how you see yourself. When you look at a picture of yourself, that's who you are. And I thought that was interesting because even though the mirror is essentially it's a reflection, that's how you look. But when we look at it, that's not what we see. Our mind is just telling us what we want to see, whether that's good or bad. And that to me was kind of always interesting, especially as I was going through training, because a lot of people would deal with kind of that issue as I was training them. And I would tell them, just don't look at the mirror and take more pictures of yourself, because that's exactly what it is. That's the actual picture versus the mirror. So it's always interesting when you go through these moments. And I'm sorry you had to deal with it. That's horrible. I kind of had a similar situation. I won't bore people because my listeners have heard it 1,000 times. But I've dealt with Crohn's disease for quite some time, and I was diagnosed 4 or 5 years ago. And again, trainer, relatively healthy, always eat right. I don't do fast food. I've been sober for 18 months. Like I'm always relatively healthy. But when I was diagnosed with that, the first thing doctors say was, go on this medication, go on that medication, do this, do that. And I even had a doctor on a couple episodes. I think it was a 225, episode 225, Dr. VK. And he was kind of explaining to me the concept of healthcare, and he calls it sick care, because we're not in the structure in this country to prevent sickness. We try to cure sickness, which is interesting because you can easily cure sickness before it happens by just taking care of your health. And we don't ever do that proactive approach. We're always reactive when it comes to healthcare, which is very fascinating because I saw it firsthand, just like you did as well, where there's never solutions. And I love the story that you found this influencer on YouTube, because I even had conversations with my doctors, my gastros, and all the specialists I saw. I'm using air quotes for people listening, but all the specialists were like, hey, just do this medication, and Humira works for this type of people. And yeah, there's side effects, but more often than not, yada, yada, yada. But they always tell us, it's been surveyed, it's been tested, it's 4 out of 5 doctors recommend it, yada, yada, yada. But when you look at the bigger picture of like social media and the benefits of it, because there's a lot of cons, but the one pro is it's like a big melting pot of surveys. Like we even talked about this a little bit earlier, where like when you're a new parent, you obviously want to listen to your pediatrician, but also you can go to YouTube and TikTok and you can hear from 1,000 moms that all have different stories, and none of them might relate to you, but there might be 1 or 2 that would, and you might be able to grab some information from those. And when they say, 4 out of 5 people recommend this, and it was a 90% success rate, those are all surveys from people. So when you're watching these folks on social media, a lot of doctors look at you and say, you shouldn't get your information from those people. They're not doctors. They're not practicing physicians. No, they're not, but they're dealing with the exact same thing I'm dealing with, and you're not as a doctor. Doctors have degrees. They're very intelligent. I'm not bashing doctors, but doctors don't know everything. I mean, back in the 50s, they were subscribing cigarettes to people. So they've made mistakes. I mean, they're not perfect, right? Like we're learning new information all the time. And what's cool about social media is you're getting that information in real time versus like a doctor who got their degree 20 years ago and doesn't have to get like recertified to be a doctor. So it's there again, there's a lot of cons, but there is pros to finding different stories and hearing from different people, you know.
I always say I want to know who like the 4 out of 5 doctors are and what are they getting paid.
Right.
Like
And who's
who's
paying them?
paying who?
Right.
Like I don't care. Like, and I'm not bashing anybody. I don't care if it's a doctor or not. I
Right.
can do my own research.
Yeah.
Period. Because if you're going to try to give me a pill, which I refuse, I don't even take supplements because I try to get everything from the food that I'm eating.
Yeah.
I don't need to replace stuff that I'm missing because I make sure the stuff that I'm eating is healthy. Now, does that mean that I don't love a good lasagna loaded with like the most mozzarella? Yeah, I do. But like as a whole, I try to eat very healthy. I don't eat fast food. I cook 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I'm not going to take a pill to fix this one thing that's going to splinter off and give me 10 other problems because that's what
Right.
happens. My husband has ulcerative colitis and very sick. He was very sick
Yeah.
and went to the doctor. First thing they did right out of the colonoscopy, oh, take this. And I'm like, there's a lot of side effects with that. And the
Yeah.
big C is one of them. We're not taking that. It's not
Yeah.
happening. We're going to change your diet.
For
We
sure.
have to.
Especially when it has to do with the gut. And I mean, that's just a no-brainer.
Yeah. And when
Yeah.
I was in there and I talked to this woman and I said, does his diet affect? Oh, no, the diet has nothing to do with it. So the diet has nothing to do with, like, how is that even possible?
Of course, it has a lot to do with it. But, you know, and that's another thing I was talking to this doctor about was he went to school for nutrition after he got his degree because they don't teach you nutrition
Yeah.
when you're a doctor, which is fucking insane.
Yeah.
It makes zero sense because we now know that the microbiome is like, that's like the second brain. If some even doctors would say it's the first brain because it literally, not that it could function without the brain, but the fact that it communicates to the brain what's happening is huge. And, you know, we're just shoving all this poison down our gullets for no reason. And we don't even know what it is. And, you know, I think we're starting to get smarter, right? But like as kids, like I mean, I'm 38 and I know you said you're over 40, so we're around the same age. Like when we grew up eating McDonald's was good because it was just straight ground beef back in the day, right? But over the course of 20 years, they've bought up farmlands and they've sprayed their potatoes with pesticides just so they could yield more French fries from one potato. And their ground beef isn't beef anymore. It doesn't even spoil. Like you could leave it out for months on end and it'll look the same and taste the same. So obviously it's the nutritional value of that beef. It doesn't exist anymore. So we kind of been fed this propaganda of like, oh, what we ate 30 years ago is what we can eat now. And that's the same conversation I have with like friends and some of my parents where they're like, well, you know, why don't you just eat this? And I go, dude, I can't eat that now because it's not the same thing as what it was when you fed it to me when I was a kid. It just doesn't, you know, why don't you just have steak every now and then? Because steak is not real steak anymore. Steak is grain fed and fed just a bunch of shit, and the cows are being tortured and their legs are being broken before they go into it's like, you don't want distress. And I remember the first time I had meat when I was first diagnosed. I think it was from, I think it was like a Thanksgiving or something. And my mother actually bought it from a farm that they humanely kill lamb. And we got lamb shanks. And it was tender and it was perfect and it didn't affect me at all, my gut. And I'm not saying that is the right thing to do or the wrong thing. I mean, I don't know. All I could say is when I had like ground beef from the grocery store, I get affected.
I don't eat that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to it to where farm to table, it's a real thing. So whether you eat plants or you just eat meat, I think there's a way to do it to where if it's just like you said, it's whole foods, it's good foods. That's the answer. I don't know if I eat mostly plant-based. I don't know if the answer is all plant-based. I don't know if it's all meat. There's some fascinating studies about the carnivore diet, but also there's a little bit of propaganda to that shit too, you know, but there's pros and cons to everything, I think, and we just are brainwashed into think that it's only this way for this person. Every single person is different, and you just have to figure out, what's best. But I think we all could agree that if everyone eats a little bit more healthy and more whole foods and no processed foods, I think that is probably the answer.
It's like one person's pleasure is another person's poison. So plant-based won't work for some people, but and I like a balance. I actually have, I get everything from a farm, like 10 minutes from my house,
Nice.
everything. There's a really cool website. It's called localharvest.org.
Mm.
And you can type in your zip code. It'll tell you where CSAs are, which I'm a part of one. Some people you can buy into their farm and then you get weekly produce or meats. But it'll tell you where the farmers markets are in your area. It connects you directly to the farmer so that you don't have to go to the store and you just have to put your zip code in. It's a really,
Wow.
really cool resource.
What's the website again?
Localharvest.org. I
Local
have not
harvest.
found one person who's I've told that has no options around them. So it's pretty
Really?
cool. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And and why isn't that open to the public, you think? Well, easy answer, right? Like you're cutting out the corporations and the guys that make tons of money from it. Similar to how, like, when you go to the doctor, right? When you don't take those meds, they don't get paid.
Exactly.
That's why they're pushing things. And it's so weird. I feel like it's happened so quickly, right? Because when I hear stories of my parents when they were growing up, obviously they didn't deal with half the things that we have to deal with now. But I don't necessarily think it's like corporations' fault. I think it all started with a noble, kind of like noble flag that they put in the ground and said, hey, we're going to create this chain McDonald's and we're going to make people be able to afford good quality meat at an affordable price, and we're going to make it quick and it's going to be amazing. And then somewhere along the line, they're like, hey man, if we put this chemical in, we could make like 1 million more fries and then we could charge the same. So we're making like 80% profit. Should we do it? And maybe it took some pulling, maybe like, no, let's not do it. And then like, well, we need to open up 100 locations in 6 weeks. And you're like, okay, we could do that. Let's go and cut those corners real quick because we need to buy these buildings. But then we're going to go right back to what we were founded on. And then eventually those people die off, new people come in, they want money, and greed. And I think, now we're just in a situation where it's just really hard to get your information from people we thought we could trust, 50 years ago.
I think it's crazy too that, like, I posted yesterday about how if people started referring to fast food as fake food, maybe
Yeah.
people wouldn't eat it. Maybe they would question. And I'm really big on like what you do with your kids. So I grew up in a house that my grandmother cooked every meal. We were at the table at 5 o'clock. How was your day? Everyone ate together and it was a homemade meal. I got grounded because my friend had SpaghettiOs. And I came
Nice.
home and I said to her, and then she was Italian, and I said, Lindsay had these SpaghettiOs. They were so great. And she grounded me. And she was like, if you want spaghetti, I'll make you spaghetti, but you're not eating that shit out of the can. So I thought she was like crazy. So when I would go to my friends' houses, I would have, the mac and cheese and the
Sure.
pierogies and all the stuff that I couldn't have growing up. But now, as an adult, I don't eat that stuff and I don't feed my kids that stuff.
Yeah.
So I had posted this and this woman commented and she was like, I agree with what you say, but McDonald's is real beef. And I'm like, I didn't write about it. I'm like, okay. Yeah, okay. My mom has a bun. I put this on TikTok. She has a hamburger bun from McDonald's. It is 24 years old and it is in perfect condition.
Oh my
It has not deteriorated. It has not molded, nothing. And I showed it on TikTok. And I was like, this was 24 years ago. Imagine what they're doing now.
Oh,
And
that's
it's not
crazy.
even like, yeah, it's not even like it's that much cheaper to go.
Right. If anything, I would
It's
even
just,
challenge to say it's more expensive than it was
yeah, just make the
20 years
food
ago.
yourself. I
Yeah.
work with a lot of clients and a lot of them want to lose weight. And we do like a health history. And I say, what percentage of your food is home cooked? And they'll say, a lot of them will say 90%. Okay. And I'm like, this is great, right? And then I say, what part of that 90% is boxed, frozen? And they go, well, 90%. Okay.
Yeah.
What part of that is like, they're not, it's not, people don't understand what home cooked means. And if
Yeah.
we eat like our ancestors, and I'm talking like your great grandparents, they did not have access to the shit that we have today. So if we just act like them and just
Yeah.
eat from the earth, we're all going to be fine.
Yeah. And, a lot of people say, and it's funny you did a video on that because I did a summer one yesterday where I was commenting to some dude that responded to one of my podcasts with my buddy who's from Italy. He's from Rome. And he came on my episode and we posted TikTok together. And he goes, one thing I hate about America is in Italy, we take nothing and turn it into something. Here in America, you got everything and you can't make nothing, like something like that. And he was pretty much essentially making, that was a horrible accent. He was pretty much making the point of saying, listen, we can literally go outside, pick our own stuff and make a meal for 50 people. In America, you just go through the drive-thru. And then this jabroni commented back saying, most Americans cook at home and we're more healthy, yada, yada. So I threw a bunch of statistics at him, like 70% of America is obese, 80% of Americans cook at home, but out of that 80%, like 47% of those foods are frozen items that they just heat up and microwave and like microwavable dinners. So this guy's throwing out statistics of like people make microwave dinners at home. So that counts as making food at home? No, bro. Like that's like going to dinner, but just cutting out the middleman. Like that doesn't make any sense. It's like you have to actually get fresh food. And it's just so weird, like our concept of time where we can't spend 30 to 40 minutes cooking at home versus how much time do you spend getting ready to go out to dinner? My wife is an hour. So then you drive, that's 20 minutes. You sit down, it's another 20, get your food. I mean, it's a 3-hour ordeal to get shitty processed food that now, especially with my Crohn's, I just think about the timeline of that food. Like you're talking farm to table, which is great. But like, you think about the timeline of food. Like let's say you go to Applebee's. That's a horrible example. I haven't been to Applebee's in 20 years. But you go to Applebee's and there's a steak on your plate. That steak took 50 trips to get to your plate. Across the country, in a truck, changing temperatures, different people touching it, hopefully with gloves, packaged, unpackaged, reheated, heated, slabbed on a plate, sit in the back. You ever see the movie Waiting?
It's my favorite.
It's the greatest movie. I used to be a bartender and server, so that shit is 100% real, people, by the way. So it's like you go through all that and it's like, why risk it? And by the way, they charge you $100, you and your partner. Mm-hmm. So why would you do it? But for whatever reason, I think maybe it's society and culture and maybe the movies we watch and the TV, like we're trained to do this, right? Friday night, dinner and a movie, right? Let's go out. We have to go to a restaurant and have wine. And I don't know what it is, but a lot of my friends still are in their 40s and they can't get out of it. And I'm just like, it's going to get worse and worse. It's scary, especially as a new father. I mean, it's terrifying because I have to be like the idiot that has these thoughts in my head. Like my other buddy has 2 kids and we're having the conversation with daycare, which I want to get into with you. But we're having the conversation with daycare and feeding them food, and we're making our own food for our daughter, and we're, giving her whole foods. And I'm not going to have her eat vegan because I personally don't think everyone should be vegan. I think if your body calls for it, that's great, but you need to try out good things and whole foods and good meats and good proteins. So we're giving her eggs and all this stuff. And he goes, dude, why don't you just buy the food? Like, why do you spend so much time making it? And I go, listen to what you're saying, bro.
How hard is it to mash a banana? Is that hard?
It's so hard. And it's so great too, because you don't have to buy 2 things. Like I'm eating bananas and I just take my banana and I just mash it up and I mix it in with some cinnamon and some oats and boom, you know what I mean? Like avocado and this and squash and all. And I go, dude, even if it took me twice as long, that's my daughter. Like, this is where I haven't talked to him in a couple of weeks, because the last thing I said to him was, I go, dude, that's my kid. Like, the question is, why do you give your kid processed bullshit? Because she can't make this decision herself. So you're literally setting her up for failure. And it's going to kind of have the series of events. God forbid she gets something like I got. Like, it's not my parents' fault that I have Crohn's disease, because it's not necessarily genetic or hereditary, but I treated my body like an amusement park when I was in my 20s. So that's why I have Crohn's, I feel like. And if I was more educated then than I am now, I don't think I would be dealing with this. So you got to at least set them up
It's
for success.
Yeah, 100%. And what your daughter eats now is
Yeah.
how she's going to eat when she's older. And there are
Mhm.
so many cases of mold and worms and
Oh,
everything else, mites in those pouches. A lot of those pouches aren't clear. And that's for a reason because are you eating it? Are you squeezing it into a bowl and looking at it before you give it to your kid? No, you're just throwing it in their mouth, right? Just like a lot of people throw the iPad.
yeah.
Here, take the iPad. They don't
Yeah.
want to be bothered.
Yeah.
But it's like, yes, it might take 10 more minutes out of your day, but I guarantee you, if some of the people that are listening to this take 10 minutes off of their screen time while they're shitting and just get off the toilet, they have time to mash a banana. I promise, it's not that hard. And like my daughter eats avocado, like for a snack, avocado, everything seasoning, boom, she eats that. And a
Yeah.
lot of people say, well, I don't understand why she eats like that because that's what we did when she was little. We weren't a chicken nugget and mac and cheese family.
Yeah.
I cooked. So
Yeah.
that's what she wants. Now,
And
again, when I grew up, I wanted my friend's mac and cheese because I thought it was cool.
yeah.
But now I get why my grandma was the way she was.
Yeah. And I was going to say, you're Italian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So am I. So I was kind of growing the same way where like, you know, my nanny Joy she was like that. She Sunday dinners, cooking at home, everyone's there, everyone's got a chore to do,
Yeah.
like everyone's stirring something, and you learn at an early age, like it's not just about the cooking aspect of it, is
Hmm.
because we are kind of so addicted to our devices, and there is a lot of cool shit out there. I mean, YouTube's awesome, TikTok's great. Like you ever scroll TikTok, it's amazing. The dopamine hit you get is phenomenal. I get it. But you know what's also phenomenal is like just cooking and watching your kid watch
Yeah.
you. And then as they get older, like I can't wait for her to stir the pot in the gravy, you know what I mean? And watch her smash the tomatoes and just make a big mess and my dog cleans it up on the floor. Like that's an ordeal, man. That's a fun
Yeah.
time. Fuck TikTok. That's cool. And the more of that you do, there's a radical dopamine hit that you haven't seen in a while. And when she was born and we're starting to do these things, it's cool to see. It's a cool experience to get them a
Yeah.
part of that. And then in terms of kids, I know we wanted to talk about a couple things because I didn't realize we're almost at 45 minutes already. So walk me through kind of what you were telling me, because this was kind of terrifying, right? You sent me an article or a screenshot of,
A woman that won't post I didn't read her story, but like
yeah,
BuzzFeed did a thing on like why she won't post her kids. And I
right,
do the same thing. Um, I won't even say I don't even like saying I have a daughter. Like for the longest time, I would switch in and out from saying it was a boy, it was a girl, just so people like really don't know. For two reasons. So one, when she was born, I did what everybody did. So and so, this many ounces, this time. I started crowning at this time. Like everybody shares everything, right? It's
sure,
normal.
yeah,
And then I was in the grocery store and she was like 3 weeks old. And this woman came up to her. I was looking at apples and it was like 2 seconds. And she was touching her hand and saying her name. Oh my gosh, you're so cute. Ba, 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 ba. And I was like, excuse me, like, hello? And she was like, oh, it's okay. I'm your Facebook friend. I went to school with your mom. And my mom was there. She had actually gone a couple aisles over. So my mom came back. I like was in the middle of like this thing. I'm like, it's inappropriate to touch somebody's child. I don't know who you are. I don't care that we're Facebook friends. This is extremely weird. Please get away from my kid. And my mom was like, oh my God. So here, these two didn't even get along. So this woman was like following me from some weird stuff with my mom from high school. Now, I obviously don't know that because they're strangers on the internet. You
sure,
assume everybody's there for like a good time, but they're not. And I was so upset with myself because I'm like, this was my fault that this
yeah,
woman knew my daughter's name, felt comfortable because I was sharing photos of her. And thank goodness this was only 3 weeks in. I wiped everything off. I've never said her name again. In fact, I reference her as Mr. Wilson because if I ever do show her, like if she happens to be in a photo,
mhm,
her face is covered. Like she was behind the Christmas tree one time and the branches were covering her face. And somebody said, oh my God, she's like Wilson from Home Improvement. And it just stuck. So that's what she goes by. Um,
that's hilarious.
and it's really just like a personal preference. But I also had my best friend was in posting a lot of stuff online, same views and values that I have about certain things medically. And this woman called DIFUS on her from Facebook and had information from Facebook, and they showed up at her house. This was during COVID. It was absolutely crazy.
Was she doing
Uh,
something gnarly, or was it just regular posts?
it was a regular post, but she was posting about vaccines, and the woman did not like that. She did not
Oh,
like her. Yeah. So all of a sudden it went from, and her son is injured from this, and she's dedicated her entire life to helping him. And this lunatic said that she was injecting bleach into him, which was like, so, and this is, she had to deal with this. And I'm like, I'm not putting anything about my kids online. It's nobody's
oh,
business. And it's really crazy because I cannot stand when people share like bath. And if you've ever done this, I apologize. I don't know this, but like their child in the bath, right? Oh, look, they're in the tub with bubbles and they have like heart emojis covering them. And I say to people, how would you feel if your husband did this to you? Would
yeah,
you appreciate being in the tub at 40 plus, whatever, and no, I said, then why are you doing it to your child? These are like special moments between you and your kid, and you're sharing it with the world for some unforeseen reason. It's
yeah.
crazy. I know a lot of people who do home births. I wish I could have done a home birth. Believe me, I would have. um that they do all of this stuff.
But they
they
film it.
don't they film it and
Yeah.
share it, and then I'm like, what? This is in your house. Like, isn't the point of having the baby in the house that you don't have like people like bothering you? Like, and now I'm seeing you
Yeah.
crowning. I'm literally seeing you crowning. I had to see that. I'm friggin'
Yeah.
drinking my like, really? No.
Yeah, and we've been torn doing things because we also obviously we have a lot of friends that have kids and they don't do things as strict as we do. And we're pretty I would say we're pretty free when it comes to it, but we try to like block and do this back of her head and do it. Occasionally though we'll do like, especially when she started to eat foods, we'll do like little 5-second boomerangs of her eating something, whatever. But she has a bib on and she's doing it. But then I see like some of my friends that their daughters are topless, getting fed.
Yes.
And I don't say anything, obviously, but
It's weird.
it's a little
It's weird.
strange, especially
Yeah.
as a father, even as a mother. Like that's your daughter, that's a girl. And not to like put one gender on another, but again, I think if it was like my boy, I wouldn't give a shit. Like whatever. Because you wouldn't do that 5 years from now, right?
Exactly. And the
So
thing is, like,
yeah.
not every person, what is the saying? It's like not every person's a pedophile, but every pedophile's on the internet. Where are they going to go? It's the easiest thing to do is to be on the internet. And there's
That's
so many, like,
yeah.
I went down a rabbit hole years ago because I was just looking into like all this stuff, and a lot of the people, it's normal photos on these websites. It's normal Facebook photos, Instagram photos that are screenshot and saved that get uploaded to these sites.
Also like
That
not even like perverted photos, just
No, but people use
like
them as perverted photos. And like I was watching a whole documentary on this, and like they were showing, and I'm like, these are just normal pictures that to you and I mean absolutely nothing, but to the wrong people mean everything. And it's like, why would you not protect your child? I posted a video on TikTok with my oldest. I was able to ask her permission. Are you okay with me filming this? Because she was sick and I wanted to show all of the remedies that I would do. Because a lot of people don't know certain things and they want to learn. And
sure.
I'm not trying to teach anybody, but like this is what I do in my life. I had so many people comment like, oh my God, she's so hot. Oh, can I have her number? Does she have social media? Let me see her. And I'm like, whoa.
No.
And I'm like, yeah. I just did a response to it yesterday because somebody else asked, can we see more of your daughter? No, you can't see anything. No.
Oh, that would kill me. Oh my
Yeah. And
god.
I'm like, it's your job as a parent to just protect your kid. And by the way, I don't want my kid having a phone, my
Yeah,
youngest, right?
for
So
sure.
if I'm constantly filming her for social media and she knows I'm posting her, what's going to happen when she does get a phone when she's older? She's going to be
Same
doing
thing.
all this stuff and posting herself because, well, why not? Well, you did.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know.
such a
That's
good
just my
point.
opinion.
Yeah, and again, I don't. There's just so many. Because here's the bottom line. The bottom line is just people are shitty. There's just And now there's more and more shitty people because they have more and more access to information and resources. And, back in the day, you didn't have to worry about this stuff because there was probably the same amount of pedophiles back in the day than there is now. But the problem is they have more access to be, quote unquote, a better pedophile. I mean, a more successful pedophile because there's just more bullshit that they can deal with versus back in the day, they had to go to parks and it was obvious. But now there's websites on the dark web. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And again, this is like one of those issues where I get into a lot on this podcast, but I don't mean to, where like our government, and especially when you talk about sex trafficking, and they need to do more when it comes to this because, and I've said this before, social media's been out for 20 years. That's given them, to be generous, 18 years to figure out social media. I'm giving them 2 years of like, oh, what is this social media? Facebook? What? Oh, we need to hire a team of people to figure this thing out and keep up with trends and yada, yada, yada. So you have 18 years, okay? You should have been ahead of this. Now you look at AI, it's the same thing because now you could take images of even me and there's no representation of U.S. citizens or globally for that matter of protecting our rights, protecting our likeliness. Like there's some companies that are buying likeliness as celebrities. Okay, that's great. But what about like us? What about us citizens? All my internet information's out there. You need to do something to block that, to secure that, to encrypt that. But there's nothing going on. So even if my daughter is never on the internet until she's 18, there's cameras all over the place. She's walking down Sprouts and she's getting her. Okay, so if that photo leaks online, how is her privacy going to be protected? What if they take that photo and they indoctrinate AI into it, and now they got a full body image, and they take that image and they put it on the internet? This is not far fetched. This is happening as we speak. It's just not very good. But in 10 years, in 20 years, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be indistinguishable from reality. It's going to be like a real photo, and that's terrifying me because there's nothing in place to protect us from that. And it's shitty because you think when we pay our taxes, it should go to goods and services, right?
Don't get me started on that.
I love getting that topic because I get a lot of hate for it, and it's so funny. Like you're supposed to have those goods and services like first responders, healthcare, dividend your road. That should be fixed pretty quickly, right? These are what taxes. They're not supposed to go across the country and fund wars that have nothing to do with us. Like there's things that taxes should be paid for, and I think we're dropping the ball on a lot of stuff. So I don't know, but let's open up that wormhole. Taxes and go.
No. I have a different one to go in.
Ooh, let's do it.
I wanted to touch back. So when you were talking about like predators and stuff like that, a lot of people, and this is everything I base not to get like heavy, because I really didn't think I was going to be talking about this, but when I talk to people who had a perfect childhood, they have a different way of bringing up their kids because they think that the world is perfect. So I had a very lovely childhood, but I also found myself being molested for 5 years of my life, which as a parent now, because of that, it's made me a much better parent and a much more aware parent. So no sleepovers. Everybody thinks that like it's at the park, what you said, you go to the park, it's more common in your own family, like the people that are closest to you, to harm your child than a complete stranger. That's the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand. It's, Uncle so-and-so, best guy in the world. Oh, this, that. And then all of a sudden, because you trust these people, because everybody doesn't know. My brother says it to me all the time. He was like, you could be a like complete psychopath and I would have no idea. He's like, we talk 10 times a day. But he's like, everybody lives their lives, right? Like separate lives. Because a lot of times I'm like, Aunt, like, where are you? Like, I didn't talk. And he's like, you don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, I know where you are. But like, that's his joke. And I'm like, at the same time, it is true. Because if I was doing something absolutely terrible, is that what we would be talking about on the phone? No, I would be keeping that to myself. So if you have your kids, like, she's never slept out, ever. I've put my child to bed every night. I've been home. We don't go out. It's like, we are in our like bubble, and it's a great bubble. I don't have the desire to go out and do all these things. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. And I want to
Sure.
be home with my kid and make sure she's safe.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, that's why I've lost a lot of friends because they're like, well, don't you want a break? No, like I'm a parent forever, right? We're parents forever. But active parenting is so much different now than when they're older and moved out and have their own families. I'm not going to be
Mm,
actively parenting. Like, they're not going to need that, right? But
yeah.
like now, in these amazing years, I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't need, like, we don't do sleepovers with friends. I don't know you have no idea who's over these people's houses. So
Yeah.
because we homeschool, we all kind of have the same thing. Like, nobody in my homeschool group does sleepovers. So there's never a she's getting asked and then I have to say no, right?
Right.
But the cool thing is, one of the best birthday parties we went to, it was a sleepover party, but you left when it was time to go to sleep. So we were all there, everyone was in jammies. You did everything that you would do, watch the movies, eat the popcorn, have the s'mores, and then goodbye, and you go home and go to sleep. But when I tell people this, a lot of them are like, I just don't get it. I'm like, well, you want it then. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Man, that's first of all, that's a great idea. Um, and let me ask, are you local? Where are you at? Are you in Florida?
Me?
Yeah,
Yes. I moved here 3 years ago from New Jersey.
yeah, because I'm in Tampa, me and my wife, and obviously we don't live separately. But I love how I like reiterated that. Yeah, me and my wife are here. Um, she got a place, I got a place. We split our daughter custody, but we're married happily. We were having this conversation with the same buddy I was telling you about earlier, because he does not homeschool, and we have kids the same age, and we're definitely dedicated to homeschooling. And there's so many great
It's the
groups.
best.
Yeah,
It's the
there's so many great
best.
groups in Tampa. And the concept when I tell this to people, because my wife taught pre-K for a while. She was at some childcare place like Primrose, and she did teaching for I think like 10 years. And it's always been a passion of hers to get back to it and do it. So instead of getting paid for it, now she can actually teach her daughter. So it's like a win-win for her. And
Yeah.
she could be a stay-at-home mom when the time comes. But when I tell people this concept, it's interesting to hear them because, like you said, their first thought is like, ugh, don't you want like some time away? And there's two folds that come out. First of all, quick answer, of course not. I want to be with her as much as I can. That's why I'm fortunate enough to be able to work from home and own my own company where I could do that. But then secondly, like you, I had some health scares, not just with Crohn's, but 2 years ago I didn't find, but they found a tumor in my lung. And it turns out it was benign. Thank goodness it wasn't cancerous, but I had to get a portion of my lung removed, a third of my right lung, actually. So the surgery was brutal. Recovery sucked. I'm still kind of recovering from it. We obviously weren't pregnant at that time. We were trying for years. We had to go through IVF and all this stuff. Thank goodness it happened, but it was such a crazy time in my life because I got laid off from my job due to the pandemic during that time.
Mm.
I had another great job that paid me way more. I was so happy. And then this happened with my lung. And then right when I got out of the surgery, the whole company shut down. They went bankrupt. So now we're like doing this IVF thing, which if you know it costs us
Yeah.
a pretty penny. So I'm stressed out. I'm bothered. But then I realized there is one thing that I can control, and that is what I'm going to do with my life. And I don't want to work for somebody, and I don't want to be away from our daughter because at this time we found out we were pregnant. So I'm like, I'm going to stay at home. I'm going to start my business because I've always wanted to. And that could be to stay at home dad. And when I tell people this whole thing where they're like, well, childcare, this child, and I go, dude, I had a tumor in my lung. I thought I was going to have to go through chemo. I thought it was going to be it. Like, could you imagine if that happened now? You think I'm going to have my daughter go to childcare while I'm like doing chemo and I can't spend every moment with her? It's like you don't realize how precious time is until you go through these situations like what you shared and what I'm talking about. And when people don't go through that, they do think the grass is greener. They do think life is so pretty and pink because you were raised so good. And bottom line is it's not the 50s anymore, right? Houses aren't 30 grand, right? Like there's not a new disease every 5 seconds. Mortality isn't down drastically. Retirement ages aren't going up. Like it's up to 70 years old now. So like if you're in this generation, like you got shit to worry about. You got stresses. Things are happening. The last thing I want to do, I got to spend time with my family. I got to do what I got to do to to enjoy this life. I don't want to worry about all this other stress that's going on, because there's a lot to be stressed about. But when you kind of hone it down and just focus on what's really important, when you have these life-changing things that happen, things open up a lot and your perception changes big time.
I think that's awesome. And it's so good you're like that, because that's such a good quality to have as a parent, to actually want to actively be there, because so many people don't. The best lesson I've ever learned, I was in school a couple years ago, and there was a whole thing on finance. And I was like, oh my God, I don't do this freaking finance stuff. Like, I don't care. And I had to do it. And there was a speaker, and they were explaining how you don't pay for things. I'm sure whoever's watching this is so sick of me saying this, but it changed my life. Okay. You don't pay for things with just money. You pay for them with your time. So how many hours does it take away from your family, whether you work at home or not? I work from home. I know when I'm working, I'm not playing, right? How many hours does it take for you to make your mortgage payment? How many hours does it take for you to make your car payment? How many? And I was like, all of a sudden it had clicked, because we just had bought a new car, and that was 2021 was the year of the vehicles for us. I don't know what we did. We bought too many, and we was like a sickness happening. So my husband wanted, we had an Expedition, but he wanted the Timberline. So we ordered the Timberline. It was going to take like 8 months to come in, fully punched out. It's all he talked about. He was so excited. So I'm sitting in this class, and I'm like, I get off, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like, we need to make adjustments. I'm not making a $700 a month payment. That's so many hours, like, right? And I called him up, because he was working out of state at the time. And I was like, we need to cancel the Timberline. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, and I'm trading in the Expedition, and you're trading in your truck, and we're downgrading. And he was like, what are you talking about? And we did that week. I went down. We have a Bronco Sport, as one of my friends would say, not the nice one. It's got no leather seats. It's got nothing moves on it. No, like, it's just a normal vehicle.
No upgrades. It's cheaper that way.
Yeah. I got rid of his other truck that was brand new, and he is in an EcoSport. And guess what? The payment for the two is less than more than half of what we were going to be spending.
Just one, yeah.
Like, we saved so much money. And it's funny, because at first he was like, it was a hard like pill for him to swallow, because he was so excited about this, mainly because when you order it, we were able to bypass, like the automatic start or stop that happens.
Stop, yeah.
There was no button for it, just would have never done that.
Right.
And he was like, now he's like, you know what? It's a car. It gets you from point A to point B. We don't have to work as much. Like, I think people want more and more and more. And then you have to work more and more and more. And then you're stressed. And then you're a shitty parent, because you're so worried. And I'm not saying you're a shitty parent because of that, but you're so worried about the bills that you created yourself, that if you just downsize, even the house that we bought, that was another thing. I mean, he wanted new construction, lake behind us, no neighbors. And we were looking. And guess what? That's not what we're in.
Yeah.
So we had to renovate everything, but it was like so much cheaper.
Yeah.
I just want to like work less and live more.
Yeah. God, if that's not a bumper sticker, I don't know what is. Yeah, we did something similar with our cars. We had two cars, and we downgraded to one. We got a Tesla a couple years ago, and electric or not, when you do the math, it just. I don't want to go down. Oh, you should eat plant-based and have Beyond Burgers, and no. But the only reason I got a Tesla, I've had stock in them for a while, so I'm like, I kind of have to, right? I felt obligated. I want to support it. But also, like, there's so many superchargers around us, and I ended up getting something installed in my house, a supercharger, and it just makes more sense. Like, back when I bought it, it was $35,000 for a Model 3.
Right.
I mean, that's fucking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It cost me maybe $20 a month to charge it at the house. A month. And our car payment's like $500 a month. So we got rid of both cars. So now we're saving like $600-$700.
Yeah.
So people don't understand, like you said, $700 a month. I mean, unfortunately, the average human being in America, the average makes $32,000 a year. So if you just do the math, not household. That's one person. If you just do the math, I mean, that's almost double your car payment. So if you just get rid of a car payment, you're making an extra 10, 15 grand a year just by
Yes.
getting rid of that car payment. And I have a buddy that just Ubers everywhere. It's cheaper to do that depending on your work schedule. It's cheaper to
Right.
do that than it is to have a car payment, and insurance, and all that. So, and gas. You're not paying for gas when you're Ubering. So it's like those little things where, again, it's that pill that it's hard for us to swallow, because we're told at the age of 30, get a house, get married, you got to start having kids, right? You need
Yeah.
to have a glass of wine
Get
at
in
5
debt.
p.m., right? Like there's
Yeah.
rules that you're supposed to do when you get a certain age in America. You have to do them. You have to have a car, and you have to have a credit card, and you have to have a house, and you don't really have to. You have to just figure out what's best for you and your family. And more importantly, like you said, figure out a way to keep your break even low, save more money, so that way you can live a little bit more.
Yeah. I want to
Yeah.
put my money on, like, we bought an RV and we
Oh,
like to
nice.
travel and see stuff. Um,
Love it.
I want to
Love
put
it.
my money there. I do have a funny Tesla story.
Please. I love a good Tesla story.
So I have a friend
Okay.
who's a doctor,
Mm,
super wealthy, right?
mhm.
And my husband always makes fun of him because they only Teslas, right? And
Sure.
he's like, no, right? So we had our kindergarten graduation, and the key fob, whatever, I don't know, the lingo the car would not start. The app
Right.
would not start. The car would not start. The key, nothing was working. So he ended up showing up in his neighbor's like Ford Fiesta because
Oh
the
my
Tesla could not get, he
wouldn't
almost
work.
missed his daughter's kindergarten graduation. And my husband said, there's nothing like a key. There's nothing like a solid key to just turn on your car.
you know,
No shade. I'm just
I
saying.
but I got to tell you, there is a lot of truth to that. I think they fixed in the new models. I think they fixed that issue before, but again, they have a card now. It's like a credit card. But if that goes missing and your phone is powered off or doesn't work, then yeah, you're fucked. I mean, you got nothing. You got nothing to start the car. So yeah, there's definitely pros and cons. I've heard some crazy horror stories of Tesla. It still makes me, and I didn't really buy it because of that. Um, like because it's a Tesla. I just bought it because it made sense at the time. I have grown to love it, though, I must say.
Yeah.
Even though what I love the most is because I'm not this type of person, but it's fun to play this type of person. Is I'll just bring up a Tesla for no reason in conversation. Like they'll be like,
What?
I'll just bring up that I have a Tesla out of
Oh,
nowhere. Not that I'm that type of person, but I feel like because I have a Tesla, I have to do that. Because to me, it's funny to see your face when I say Tesla. That's the only reason I do it, is because not that I brag about having a Tesla. I just like being part of that. It's almost like you ever know, someone that has a Jeep Wrangler.
oh, it's their whole personality.
That's all them. Yeah, it's
The
great.
ducks? Is that, I didn't know that there
It's a
was like
thing.
I can't listen.
It's a duck
I
club. I don't
don't
know
want
what
to
it is.
drive something that there's a signal to
Uh,
let people know I'm driving that. Like the
yeah,
wave, like the Jeep. Stop, just stop. I was with my
yeah.
girlfriend. She has a really nice Jeep and she's driving. Shout out to Jess. And she's like, oh, it's a Jeep wave. I'm like, we're done. We're done. We're done.
Yeah, it is like a cult.
No.
Yeah, it's worse than being a liberal. It's like a cult. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Um, but listen, this was so we're over an hour, so this was fun. I could probably talk to you for a little bit longer, but I don't want to take too much of your time. But this was a blasty. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
no, this was good. A lot of good topics here, a lot of good information. If you can do me a solid, I'll leave your Instagram and your socials below. But if you can give people a shout out where they could find you, what you got going on, any websites you want to talk about, all that jazz.
Yes. So TikTok, Natural Minded Mama, with little underscores in between it. I just changed my Instagram to the same thing. And I
Nice.
just share all like recipes, remedies, anything wellness related. I am a health coach. My website is almsandwellness.com. Um, and I just have like links to a lot of things that I love, which has been pretty cool. When I started TikTok, I wanted nothing to do with it because I was like, I'm too old for this shit. I'm not dancing and like shaking stuff. I'm not doing that. And my friend was like, just do what you do and share your stuff. And my first video, I was like, I'm gonna give it 2 tries, 2 videos, that's it. And my first video, I made homemade mayo, which is so delicious if you have not done this. So good.
Super easy.
And it hit 1 million in 24 hours. And I was like, oh, this is where I want to be. Because you don't get that on Facebook. There's, too much censoring. That's why they want to get rid of TikTok, because the reach is just crazy. And it's
Yeah.
good because it's great information. So yeah, anybody that says, not to go off on a tangent, but like, oh, it's because they're spying on you. Everything is spying on you. Please do not be that stupid. Please
Yes.
do not be that stupid. And if they really cared about your health, there would be no fast food, there'd be no cigarettes and anything like that. Like that would be shut down. So it's okay. And it's an election year, so we have to like really make sure that people can't talk.
Yeah.
That's all
And,
that is. So
and dude, it's even more funny that they're doing this in hopes, I think, that people are like, oh, they're helping us, right? They're protecting our privacy.
Yeah.
Fuck China, fuck Russia, like America #1. But no, that's not, like, that is the great thing with TikTok. They're so ignorant to the fact that as they're doing this, if you go and look at hashtag free TikTok or hashtag save TikTok, there is so many more people that are talking about this now and that are aware of it. It's opening up people's eyes way more. Because you're right, everything is spying on. I mean, even your laptop, has the capability of spying. That's thanks to the Patriot Act. We agreed as citizens to do that, and they're trying to do the same thing right now with this TikTok ban. And it's super fascinating because I love how they agreed on this. Congress agreed on this. Out of all the things and all the shitty things going on in this country, this was one thing that, in just a couple years, boom, they agreed.
yeah, I think it's like we are in such a well-oiled machine that people get everything spoon-fed to them. And we are convinced that anything that's not the United States is horrible and everyone else is doing it right and we're not. My It's funny because I just had a friend that went skiing out of the country and he was like, Casey, nobody was overweight.
Yeah.
Nobody's overweight.
Yeah.
And then my girlfriend went to Belize and she was like concerned she had to go there for her son because they wouldn't do the treatment here on what he needed because it was illegal, whatever.
Yep.
And she went to this place. He's doing leaps and bounds better.
Yeah.
Okay. And when they went to the market, the only thing they were told was not to eat the fruit from the US because it's laced with like chemicals, like it's sprayed with chemicals. So everything else, she's like, I walked outside, I picked my fruit, I was eating off the land. But like, yet when they were leaving, everyone's like, oh my God, be careful. It's scary there. And it's like, we're brainwashed.
Yep. Dude, Casey, I'm telling you something. When, like, now that my eyes are open and I've had so many people, thank goodness for this podcast because I've interviewed people from all over the world and it's been so great, especially people in Europe and UK and all that. Like, when you start doing research, because now as a dad, as you know, as a new parent, you start getting even more crazy. Like, and people think you are a little nutty, but you're doing the right thing. Because when you start diving in and doing more research, I mean, even just using in the UK versus here, the oatmeal, Quaker Oats, they're only allowed 4 ingredients in that oatmeal. Here, there's like 20. Like, you could look it up. It's online right now. Just Google difference between UK oatmeal
Doritos.
and America. Doritos, same thing. Coca-Cola,
Blue
same
dye.
thing.
Yeah. It's
So
yeah.
that should tell you something. Are we doing it right, or are they? Is it UK is depriving its citizens of these great chemicals that America's putting into it, or could it be the opposite? Well, all you got to do is look around. You look at the statistics that 70% of America is obese. It could be the food. Just saying, it could be. And it's just so funny when you dive into this, because it is scary, right? Like, we've always been fed this like American dream of like, let me smoke cigars and eat steak and drink whiskey all the time because that's the American dream and I'm going to do it in public and fuck you if you don't like it and I could do what I want. There is a little bit of that that's good to have in America, but there's also like, you shouldn't really shout fire inside of a movie theater either, right? Like, there is freedom of speech and you want to do whatever you want, but also don't shout fire in a movie theater. Like, you kind of have to have those laws. And somewhere we like forgot that you can't really put everything in your body that you want. It's good to have the right to do that, but there should be some sort of laws from our government saying, hey, you could poison your body, but just so you know, this is going to give you cancer. This is going to kill you. But God forbid we do that. That would be crazy. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I could do it. We could We can go down some other rabbit hole some other time.
Oh my
'cause-
gosh, I could do this for 10 hours.
Yeah. It could be crazy. Thanks for coming on. Keep doing what you're doing. Love your content. Love your messaging. So just keep it up, man.
Thank you
We
very
appreciate you.
much. Right back at you. Thank you so much.